Welcome back to Thoughts from a Bookworm. I'm Abigail Grace. Today we are going to be talking about my all-time favorite childhood book series, which is Tiger's Curse. Now, this book, I honestly don't even remember, or I don't know, when this book series was released. I read it much later, obviously, and one of my really good friends introduced me to it, and I just fell in love with it. My favorite animal of all time is a tiger. There was a period of time where I was literally obsessed with tigers, and it all started with Kung Fu Panda. Tigress was like my girl, and I have just I'm not as obsessed now as I was when I was younger, but I was just obsessed with tigers. My very first book series that I ever wrote when I was like 16 was focused about a girl who could turn into a tiger. So I've just always loved tigers, and so I just absolutely fell in love with this book series primarily because of that reason. But it's just so much fun. I don't know if it would just be considered contemporary or if it would be a crossover genre, but it's definitely contemporary. It's in first person. It's set in our world, in like our time. But there's some like magical elements to it. There's, a curse with, so it's a little bit of a hybrid. I just don't know what the hybrid is. I know it's contemporary. I don't know what the other thing is, but it is focused on Kelsey Hayes, who is a 17-year-old girl. We're told right away that she was orphaned when she was 14. She's since been living with her foster parents, Mike and Sarah. They have two kids of their own, Rebecca and Sammy. She's kind of just going through life, trying to get through high school, trying to get a job, trying to survive on her own. She ends up getting a job at a local fairground center where there's a circus in town, and one of the primary attractions in the circus is this Indian Bengal, I'm not honestly sure how to pronounce it, but Indian tiger. And she kind of starts to grow like attached to the tiger. Like she likes the tiger, she likes hanging out with him, sitting in his cage, she'll write in her journal, she'll draw, stuff like that. And obviously, if you read the Tiger's book series, you know that the tiger is actually a man who has been cursed into a tiger. Throughout Kelsey's time at the fair, she kind of just starts, like I said, spending time with the tiger. One of the things that she says to him that we find out later is a big part of the tiger's curse is she says to the tiger's name is Ren, by the way, probably should have said that a little bit sooner, but one of the things she says to Ren as she's like leaving for the night is that she wishes he was free. We know later that for whatever reason that was like the magic word sequence that allowed Ren to turn into a man, because up until that point he had been cursed for like 200 years as a tiger. He's not able to turn into a man at all, but he was able to turn into a man for 24 minutes, call Mr. Cadam. Mr. Cadam came and got him. That's kind of how the book takes off. At some point, Ren reveals himself to Kelsey as a man, kind of explains things to her that when he was a prince, he and his brother were Indian princes, way back when, literally like hundreds of years ago, and they were cursed to be tigers by this evil, they don't call him a demon, they call him like a sorceress, I think, who cursed Ren and his brother Kishin to become tigers for all of eternity. So the book series is very heavy on Indian mythology, which I actually really liked. I'm not a fan, generally speaking, of mythology. I'm not a huge fantasy fan. I know I've mentioned that before, but I've never read Harry Potter. I read the first series of Percy Jackson, I think, was not a fan of it. I'm just not a big fan of mythology, magic, fantasy, that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, this was just so fascinating to me. One, I'd never really heard of Indian mythology. Obviously, I'm familiar with Greek mythology, Zeus and stuff like that. And there's some, Hercules is a Disney movie. So I'm somewhat familiar with Greek mythology, but I'd never ever heard anything about Indian mythology. So I just thought it was a really cool thing to be reading about because I wasn't familiar with it. There's also a lot of Indian cultural setting, I guess would be the right word, which again is really cool. I've never been to India. I've never even been out of the United States. So it was just really cool to read about this country that I had never, obviously I've heard of India, but not super familiar with it. So it really piqued my interest in that. I low-key want to go to India still. That's kind of on my bucket list of travel destinations. I would think that would be so much fun. But the majority of the books take place in India, and they take place around these ancient Indian ruins. The purpose of the book is that an Indian goddess by the name of Durga has lost a series of items that belong to her. And in order to break the tiger's curse, they have to bring Durga's gifts back to her. So the first gift that Ren and Kelsey have to find in book 1 is the golden fruit, which comes out that it's a mango, which when I read that, I don't think I'd ever tried a mango up until that point, to be honest, and I made it a point to try a mango because I was very curious, and I actually really like them. They're very delicious. But that's the goal of the first book, is they need to find the golden fruit and they need to bring it back to the Indian goddess Durga, which there are, now this, I don't know if this is actually true or if it's just true in the Tiger's Curse universe, but in the book there are various temples of Durga where they go and they perform like a series of, like, they say certain things and they do, like, they ring a bell, they give Durga a gift. It can kind of be anything, like a banana or something, and then the statue of Durga comes to life. She gives them instructions, this and that. So that's kind of how they are set on the actual quest of the series, or of the first book anyway. There's immediate chemistry between Ren as a man and Kelsey. Kelsey obviously takes some time to get used to, the turning from a tiger to a man thing. He can only be a man for 24 minutes out of every 24 hours. They at some point come across Kishan, who is Ren's younger brother, who's also been cursed, but while Ren is a white tiger, Kishan's a black tiger. I didn't know there was such thing as a black tiger, which I thought was really cool because I have, like, white tigers are my favorite, and I didn't know there was such thing as a black tiger. So for the longest time, I had a little black, like 3D printed black tiger little figurine. It broke, so I don't have it anymore. Kishan is low-key my favorite. I prefer him over Ren, to be honest. There's a lot of brotherly, like, I don't know if rivalry is the right word, but there's a lot of tension, like sibling tension between them. When Ren and Kishan were uncursed, before they were cursed, there was a girl who Ren had been betrothed to, but Kishan fell in love with, so there's that tension. They just don't really get along well. And coming from one of 4 siblings, obviously, in the relationship between me and my siblings is not always perfect. We have our moments of rubbing each other the wrong way, but I don't think any of us have ever or would ever blatantly, like, sabotage each other, or I mean, we're not perfect, of course. We have had our moments. I mean, you can't grow up in a household with 4 kids and not have there be conflict, but there was just such a contrast between their relationship and, like, the relationship that I see between my 2 brothers, because I have 2 brothers, and it was just very interesting, to say the least, because I don't honestly know how I feel about, like, it makes sense, the frustrations on both sides, but I feel like most of the frustration was very one-sided. We don't really see a whole lot of that until later, but even in this book, it's evident that Ren is the one who's holding a lot of the grudges against Kishan, which in a way is justifiable because Kishan is the one who betrayed Ren. He gave him away. He ended up being cursed the same. Kishan just kind of was the instigator of all of this. So Ren's frustration toward his brother is understandable, but still don't really know how I feel about it. Kishan is also my favorite brother. I know I said that already, but and I think Kelsey even makes the comparison at one point, he just gives me such, like, pirate vibes. The author is very focused, and I don't necessarily know why, but she was very focused on both of the brothers' eye color. Ren has very blue eyes. His mother was Asian. His father was Indian. His mother was Asian. So he's got kind of a mix about him. We were told he's a little bit lighter skinned. He's got blue eyes. He's got a little bit more Asian features than Kishan does. Kishan, we're told, is much darker skin. He's got dark hair. He's got, brown, copper, golden eyes. But Kishan just gives me total pirate vibes. Like, I can kind of picture him looking like a young Captain Hook from Once Upon a Time. But I really loved Kishan so much. He was definitely my favorite brother. Kelsey, since her parents' death, has kind of been very guarded. She's not formed too many, or if any, friendships. She, never really felt part of Mike and Sarah's family. So when she meets Ren, and Ren is showing her attention and showing that he's interested in her, she kind of, like, takes a step back. They have I think 2 or 3 scenes where they kiss, but even then she's like, okay, I need to make sure I don't fall in love with him because he's, amazing and perfect and beautiful and can have anybody who he wants, and I'm just this plain girl, and he's a prince, and he's going to go do this, and I'm going to just go to, community college. So we get a lot of insight into Kelsey's perspective, and it is in first person, so that, makes sense. I wish we would have gotten some perspective from Ren, because all we're showed from Ren is what Kelsey tells us, basically. I really like male characters who, and, men in general, who are masculine and who act like men. And one of the things that I really appreciated about Ren was that he pursued Kelsey. I think, in my opinion, he went a little bit too far and was not very gentlemanly when she said no, because there were a couple times when she told him, he didn't force himself on her or anything like that. It was just he wanted to date her and she said no, and so he was very persistent about it, which in one hand I think is respectable. Okay, he is interested in this girl. He's going to show her that he's interested instead of just saying, hey, I'm interested in you. No, okay, well, that's it. To kind of respectfully show her that he is interested. Like I said, I personally got a little bit uncomfortable because he kind of took it a little bit far and was telling her, you're gonna fall in love with me. You do love me already. You do. I'll, be here until, I don't know. It was just, it kind of went a little bit too far, and that kind of stuff gives me the ick when guy characters tell the girl that they're in love with, you love me. Why don't you admit I don't know. It just, I don't like that kind of stuff. There was a little bit of that in the Shatter Me series with Aaron Warner and Juliet, which I really do like Aaron. I way more prefer him to Adam, but just that mindset, that mentality of, I'm going to tell you what you're thinking, instead of, okay, maybe you don't love me. I love you. So I'm going to show you that with my actions. And then if things change for you, great. If not, then I'll respect that. That to me would have been, the best way to approach it, which is kind of what Kishin does later in the series. We'll talk about that later, but that's the way Kishin approached it, which I like Kishin for that. And I was not a fan of Ren in those moments. And like I said, he never forced himself on her physically or anything like that. It was all verbal, but it was still just okay, dude, why don't you just back off, Cranman?
Why don't you back off, Cranman?
So throughout the course of the book, they learn that there is a total of 4 gifts that need to be returned to Durga in order for the Tiger's Curse to be broken. So once Ren and Kelsey acquire the golden fruit and return to our world, because they're kind of crossing between worlds of magical fantasy realm and Earth. So once they return with the golden fruit to Earth, our time, they discover that Ren is now able to be a man for 6 hours a day. So the conclusion is, okay, there's 4 gifts, 4 times 6 is 24. So once they acquire all 4 gifts, Ren will be able to be man for 24 hours and the curse will be broken. So they have the first gift of India. Kelsey, at the end of the book, tells Ren that she needs to go back, or she wants to go back to Oregon. She needs to put some time and space between the two of them, because she is convinced that Ren will wake up at some point if they're spend enough time apart and realize that they're not right for each other. She does love him, but she's worried that he's going to realize one day, oh, you only love me because I'm the first girl who's ever looked at you in 200 years. I'm the one that, started all this. You feel like it's destiny, this and that. So she decides to go back to Oregon. She promises that she'll be back to help him and Kishin break the rest of the curse, because she's not going to abandon them, but she needs to go back to Oregon in the meantime while Mr. Cadam is figuring out what their next steps are. So that's how book 1 ends, is her going back to Oregon. So like I said, this was one of my favorite book series. I recently read it again, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and this is going to sound totally mean. I do not mean it like this in any way. The writing style is very juvenile, which I didn't remember it being very juvenile, and there's nothing absolutely wrong with it. Like I said, I don't mean that as a slam or anything. It was just very interesting reading it again. I don't remember noticing the writing style, and then when I read it again, it was oh wow, the writing style is different than I remembered it, but it was still good. That book series will probably always hold a special place in my heart, because I just remember the hold that book series had over me for one summer was just, it was unbeatable. But that is where we're going to end today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode.